universe is really, really, really big, and we have only seen a very tiny part of it. I hope that the future is beyond my wildest dreams, and it's something that I just cannot even imagine.
To je možda najveći i najambiciozniji projekt u koji se čovječanstvo upustilo od kako su astronauti 1972. posljednji put hodali mjesecom.
And a final word from the last man on the moon.
I'd like to just let what I believe history will record that America's challenge of today has forged man's destiny of tomorrow.
Kuju se planovi, oprema se projektira, izrađuje i testira kako bi se ljudi mogli vratiti na mjesec i otići još dalje.
And liftoff at dawn, the dawn of Orion and a new era of American space exploration.
It's not a Disney movie. This is real.
Riječ je o programu Artemida, ambicioznom visokotehnološkom projektu koji bi mogao prvi put omogućiti ljudima da žive na drugim svjetovima.
We're ready to go and go back to stay. It's not just about getting there first. We're making sure that it's a sustainable presence.
Artemis is about going back to the moon to do much more than we were capable of doing in the 1960s and the early 70s.
We want to go and explore the moon because we understand now how much we don't know.
Iz iskustava s međunarodne svemirske postaje znamo kolikim je opasnostima ispunjen boravak u svemiru.
Failure of the booster.
And how do I get back if I cannot see where I'm going? How much time do I have?
At that point, we weren't going to make it to orbit that day.
Za svladavanje tih prepreka 10 puta dalje od doma i dublje u svemiru potreban je tehnološki prevrat. Takav koji je već počeo.
The moon is going to be the place where humanity learns to live and work off-world.
Luca Parmitano već je 13 godina pripadnik astronautskog zbora Europske svemirske agencije.
I have a total of 6 spacewalks, 30 hours or so outside of the space station, and about a year spent in orbit.
This is really great. I can't help but smiling. This is awesome.
For us humans on the space station, every day is a little bit like that dream that you might have had of flying without wings.
Luka je na međunarodnoj svemirskoj postaji 2019. živio i radio s nasinom astronautkinjom Kristinom Koch.
I first learned about Luca Parmitano before I was ever an astronaut because he was part of a famous spacewalk where he actually had an experience of water being in his helmet. It was a very dangerous thing that ended up happening. So he was a hero of mine for having done that spacewalk.
Ali Kristina je ubrzo postala vlastita junakinja, oborivši je rekord u najdužem svemirskom letu među ženama astronautima. U veljači 2020. vratila se na Zemlju nakon 328 dana provedenih na međunarodnoj svemirskoj postaji.
I'm glad that it was a milestone that made people aware of where we're at. State of the art in human spaceflight really means being able to be in space for up to a year at a time. So it was great to be a part of that.
Jedan je od ciljeva programa Artemida omogućiti astronautima poput Kristine i Luke da borave na mjesecu mnogo dulje od Kristinina rekordnog boravka u svemiru, i to na udaljenosti od Zemlje 10 puta većoj od one međunarodne svemirske postaje. Misija Artemide protegnut će se možda na više desetljeća, a mjesec će poslužiti kao testni poligon za eventualno naseljavanje ljudi na Marsu. 50 godina prošlo je od kako su ljudi posljednji put kročili na mjesec. Za to vrijeme, znanstveno viđenje površine mjeseca drastično se promijenilo.
Let's see if I can't crack the corner and get that contact.
The Apollo missions brought back about a half a ton of moon rocks. And what they showed was that the moon had been baked dry.
The moon somehow formed, they got rid of all of its water, and there won't be any evidence of any type of volatiles left on the moon at all. And that's what we lived with since the 1970s.
No, nakon više desetljeća, znanstvenici su se počeli pitati krije li mjesec kakve tajne. I to tajne sačinjene od H2O.
People started wondering, well, you know, things go boom in the night on the moon.
The moon has been bombarded by comets, dirty ice balls for billions of years.
Maybe water could be hiding in the really deep, cold places at the poles of the moon where the sun doesn't shine.
Maybe some of that cometary ice is preserved.
It would immediately freeze and then stay there for billions of years.
Kako provjeriti te teorije o drevnoj vodi na mjesecu i koliko bi tog dragocjenog resursa moglo ondje biti?
Well, the only way you can find out is to go there because the moon had been forgotten.
Početkom 2000-ih NASA je započela prvu misiju na mjesec u novom desetljeću. U njoj će se isticati izvidnički mjesečev orbiter, svemirska letjelica predviđena za mapiranje površine nenadmašnom preciznošću. I drugu misiju, nazvanu L-Cross, smion pokušaj neposredne potrage za vodom u krateru na južnom mjesečevu polu.
The L-Cross mission was outrageous.
We came up with an idea of using an impactor to eject material out of one of the permanently shadowed craters on the moon and examine the content.
L-Cross je mudar način da se iskoristi upotrebljeni gornji stupanj rakete nazvane Kentaur, tako da se zabije u mjesečev krater koji nikad nije obasjala sunčeva svjetlost te podigne velik oblak svega što leži unutra. Odmah za njim ići će L-Cross koji će analizirati nastali oblak prije nego što i sam udari u površinu.
I like to make things go boom, but this was better because this was going to answer a fundamental question. Was there water on the surface? Was there water below the surface? And if so, how much?
T-minus 15 seconds, standing by for terminal count. T-minus 10, 9.
The day of the launch was one of those days that you have this anticipation. Things can go wrong. So there's a lot of tension. Is it going to explode? Is it not going to get into orbit? Is it not going to get up to the altitude that was necessary? Is there going to be a flaw? Are the instruments not going to be working? There are a lot of moving parts and non-moving parts that could screw this up big time.
Main engine ignition and liftoff of the Atlas V rocket with LRO L-Cross, America's first step in a lasting return to the moon.
And when it happens, and when you see that rocket takes off, it's just this tremendous relief.
This is it. There were still hurdles to overcome, but that was a big one.
The whole mission had to develop big sweeping orbits around the Earth and then come around and get very close to the moon, then go around and get very close to the moon. L-Cross and the Centaur rocket would find this optimum time to detach and find that best place to hit. This was a doomed mission, but it was planned. That's how we designed it. The Centaur rocket hits, throws up the plume, we go through and analyze the data. So this is a 1-2 punch, but only one of those punches would give us enough material to be able to see.
All stations flight mark, 60 seconds to Centaur impact.
We were seeing the moon for the first time close up with our instruments. That's when I realized this was real.
So we're on a kamikaze mission. We can see the moon getting closer and closer and closer. We can see the place where we're supposed to hit, and it looked like we were going right in at the right spot.
We're watching the remaining few seconds of the L-Cross mission.
It's a tremendous dance over the last 2 or 3 years, and it's all coming down to the half second.
As we approach very rapidly the surface of the Cabeus crater.
Images of the moon, smaller and smaller, closer and closer. And then hit. Once the Centaur rocket hit, the separating spacecraft was coming down with only 4 minutes to go. This is the end of the life. The key was to be able to see the gas, the dust, everything getting into sunlight to be able to make the measurements that were necessary. So we only had those 4 minutes to gather all the data, send it back to the Earth before it was too late.
10 seconds to impact. 9, 8, 7.
Very last seconds of the shepherding spacecraft trajectory as it approaches the lunar surface. We are seeing very small craters.
It's going in for the final plunge.
Spacecraft impact. Stations report LOS.
The shepherding spacecraft has hit the surface of the moon, and this marks the end of the L-Cross flight mission.
Cheers go up. We've impacted. Yay! Meanwhile, all of us payload operators and scientists are staring at the monitors, at the data.
We had to figure out, well, what really happened?
L-Cross je nosio znanstvenu opremu koja se sastojala od 5 kamera, 3 spektrometra te fotometra koje je podatke od udara prikupljao preko vidljivih i infracrvenih valnih duljina.
We've done everything we can. I'm holding my breath.
Then we began to see things.
We saw a 10 to 20 kilometer wide plume. Look at these emission lines. We're seeing these incredible signatures of various compounds in the data. About a month after the impact, people wanted to know, did you find water or not? So then I asked the whole team, should we go public now and report this? And it was a unanimous yes.
Well, now I can say today that in the 20 to 30 meter crater L-Cross made, we found maybe about a dozen of these 2-gallon buckets worth of water. And there's a whole lot more.
We saw water, not just water, but lots of water.
Hundreds of millions to billions of kilograms of water, potentially. A result that fundamentally changed the direction of lunar exploration.
This meant that the surface of the moon and the subsurface of the moon was holding secrets. It was a much more interesting story than I think that anybody really fully believed.
It accelerated a global interest in the poles of the moon. You could indeed utilize this water as a resource and maintain an extended presence there.
We look at water as the enabling compound for deep exploration. That means the ability to live off of our planet for long-term duration without having to bring it all with us.
Otkriće vodenog leda na južnom polu Mjeseca otvorilo je velike mogućnosti.
L-Cross impacts a lot our understanding of how we're going to proceed forward.
We know that at the poles of the moon, in deeply shadowed craters that never see sunlight, there is ice. And that ice can be excavated and used to make water. We can then break that apart and make oxygen to breathe.
Mjesečeva voda mogla bi imati još jednu ključnu primjenu.
But by breaking it apart, we not only get oxygen, we get hydrogen as well. And by recombining the oxygen and hydrogen, we can make rocket fuel.
Kako bi se savladala snažna zemljina gravitacija, na gorivo otpada gotovo sva masa rakete koja se lansira s našeg planeta. Kad bi se to gorivo proizvodilo na Mjesecu, svemirska letjelica mogla bi dospjeti mnogo dalje.
You need enormous rockets if you can't refuel. If you can refuel, then those enormous rockets become small rockets, and the cost of transportation dramatically decreases, which suddenly makes everything that was impossible possible.
The moon is going to be the place where we learn how to use the resources of space for the first time, and humanity learns to live and work off-world.
So water is a really fundamental resource, and that's why there's so much focus on going to the lunar South Pole, where we know that ice is in those craters.
Water is the oil of space.
Lociranje i primjena mjesečeve vode daje poticaj naraštaju astronauta, čiji je zadatak da tu viziju pretvori u stvarnost.
Looking at the moon, recognizing that yes, we do have water there as a resource, it really means that there's not only this desire to explore, but there are actual engineering goals to do while we're there that help us keep those programs sustainable.
Godine 2020. Kristina Koch imenovana jednom od astronautkinja na Artemidi, od kojih će jedna imati priliku postati prva žena koja će stupiti na mjesec.
Well, I have to say that just even the prospect of that is completely humbling.
Christina Cook.
And when I realized, oh my goodness, I am a part of the astronaut corps, something in and of itself I never thought I would be able to achieve. And at this amazing time when we're going back to the moon, we're going to stay, we're going with determination, was just really beyond belief. Just to be one small part of that is truly, truly awesome.
Biće to vrhunska svemirska letjelica koju će u orbitu ponijeti gigantska raketa još u razvojnoj fazi, pa astronaute poput Kristine i Luke prebaciti na mjesec. Zvaće se Orion.
The Orion spacecraft is a next-generation spacecraft for taking people deeper into space, leaving low Earth orbit in a capsule and exploring the moon.
Our job is to carry the astronauts from Earth to the moon and then back. It's one key element of the whole Artemis program.
Višenamjenska letjelica za posadu Orion gradi se već više od 10 godina uz redovita testiranja s astronautima radi eventualnih korekcija.
Well, many years ago, for the first time, I saw this huge spacecraft, and I'm like, what is that? Well, that was the Orion. And if you're lucky enough, like I was a couple of times, you can sit inside and perform some testing.
Astronauts have a great opportunity to be involved in Orion development, the life support systems, the systems that will make a habitable environment inside Orion, how the hand controllers are going to work, how the displays are going to display to make sure that the human factors elements are all there to make the mission safe and efficient for getting astronauts to and from deep space.
All these years of understanding problems, solving them, have all converted into creating a spacecraft that not only needs to be enduring, but also takes into consideration human interface.
When we get to sit in that seat and look at the displays, it is definitely a moment where we sit back and realize how lucky we are and what we're doing is actually contributing to answer NASA's true mission of representing people's inherent dreams to explore, to learn more, to gain knowledge. And though I spend every single day of my work as an astronaut being as prepared as I can possibly be for a real mission assignment, it's just hard to imagine that it will truly be me.
Orion će od prvog leta biti lansiran sa Zemlje ravno na mjesec, do kojeg će mu trebati 3 dana. Na brod je instaliran sustav avionike 4000 puta jači od rakete Apollo, jer će se letjelicom moći upravljati posve autonomno, a posada će biti upozorena na svaku opasnost, kao što je, na primjer, povećana razina kozmičkog zračenja.
There's some areas that we've decided to be extra protected. If we did detect high energy particles coming in, we'll send the crew to that safe haven to be able to ride out the storm.
No najvažnija zadaća Oriona nije let na mjesec, nego preživljavanje posljednjeg dijela puta na povratku kući.
When you get back from the moon, you'll be going 24,000 miles per hour, so the heat that gets generated in the spacecraft is insane.
Kako bi zaštitila Orion, NASA je osmislila najsuvremeniji toplinski štit, promjera 5 metara.
So there's the heat of re-entry and the size of the heat shield. So you need to make sure that that material is not going to crack or you're going to have any deficiencies because of the different environments that it's going to see in space.
Status check. Go Delta. Go Orion.
Takvo vozilo može se potpuno testirati samo tako da se u svemir lansira bez posade i provjeri radi li sve kako je predviđeno.
The purpose of the first test flight is to test the crew module, especially during the return phase, including the heat shield and the parachute systems coming back very fast from outer space and then landing on the water.
Carlos Garcia Galan koordinira grupu Orionovih inženjera za taj probni let.
We have been working on this design and project for many years. And out of all the problems and all the challenges that we've worked through, now we know that today everything needs to work perfectly for the mission to be successful.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And liftoff at dawn, the dawn of Orion and a new era of American space exploration.
We placed Orion on top of a Delta IV Heavy and launched it to basically have an elliptical orbit that was coming very far from low Earth orbit, so we could achieve that additional velocity coming back to Earth, so we can actually test the heat shield in something close to the environment that we'll see when we are returning from the moon. And right now we can hardly believe that we're actually hitting space. This is the first time in many years we're seeing our spacecraft in space, so it's kind of exhilarating.
1 minute, 22 seconds in, max Q, maximum dynamic pressure on the vehicle, passing 124 Mach.
The boosters are jettisoned.
We're now transcending the speed of sound.
And this is our first view from cameras on the Orion spacecraft streaming video. All of its systems operating in excellent condition on this first test flight of America's newest spacecraft.
We've done so many simulations with similar pictures, but this time, it's for real.
Nakon što letjelica opiše orbitu oko Zemlje, gornji stupanj rakete podiže Orion u još veće visine. Orion mora proći kroz opasno područje svemira zvano Van Allenovi pojasevi zračenja. Nekoliko stotina kilometara iznad Zemlje pojasevi hvataju elektrone i protone solarnog vjetra i kozmičkih zraka, stvarajući radijacijsko okruženje koje bi moglo naštetiti osjetljivoj opremi svemirskih letjelica na putu na Mjesec i na povratku.
We went through the Van Allen radiation belts to test the systems. There's more high-density protons that could impact the electronics, so we wanted to make sure that our systems were not susceptible to that. And basically, we didn't feel a blip from going through that.
Orion se penje na visinu 15 puta veću od one na kojoj se nalazi Međunarodna svemirska postaja.
Getting a more distant view of Earth than we've seen in a while.
We got as far as around 3,600 miles from Earth. Is the farthest a human-rated spacecraft has been since the Apollo program.
Što se više kapsula podigne, to će dalje pasti pri povratku na Zemlju i većom brzinom udariti u atmosferu.
The primary objective of going that far was so we could achieve the right speed during re-entry so we could test the heat shield. This is the hardest part. This is where the most challenging environments we're going to see, and really why we're doing this test.
Guidance officer confirms that Orion has reached entry interface. The moment of truth for Orion for the next 9 minutes 45 seconds.
Orion se sada vraća i juri brzinom od 30.000 km na sat. Zrak ispred kapsule komprimira se i zagrijava dok se ne pretvori u plazmu, četvrto agregatno stanje tvari.
You're going to have to hold your breath because that is also the hottest part and harshest part of re-entry.
Na ovoj snimci vidi se plazma koju Orion ostavlja za sobom. Kristina Koch proživjela je ponovni ulazak u zemljinu atmosferu pri povratku s Međunarodne svemirske postaje.
The experience of return to Earth, coming back to an actual planet from outer space, is otherworldly in every sense of the expression. You look out your window and there is literally a fireball that you see through. It's an orange hue over your window that's only about a foot away from your face. Until your window actually blackens from burning up and you can't see out of it any longer. Coming in from the moon, the velocities are going to be even greater. And so the requirements on that heat shield are going to be even more critical.
Senzori na Orionu pokazuju da je temperatura u kapsuli za posadu ostala stabilna, unatoč temperaturi od 2200 Celzijevih stupnjeva pri ulasku u atmosferu. Test toplinskog štita uspjeh je bez premca.
25,000 feet. Time to splash down less than 4 minutes.
And you start seeing all the parachutes come out as planned, like clockwork.
Jogs away. Main chute deployed. Everything looking good.
And it's just an amazing feeling that all this work you've done is paid off, and you kind of see your fingerprints in what's just happening in front of you.
We have splashdown. Splashdown confirmed at 10:29 a.m. Central Time. Orion is back on Earth. America has driven a golden spike as it crosses a bridge into the future.
Today was a great day for America. We challenged our best and brightest to continue to lead in space. The men and women of America poured their hearts and souls into this mission, and along the way they inspired others. We became part of something greater than ourselves, and while this was an unmanned mission, we were all on board Orion.
This is news across the world, and you're in the middle of it. You just finished the mission, splashdown, and all of a sudden, Barack Obama.
I'm sure you were all as proud as I was to see Orion's first successful flight test.
It's just the mission we were just doing, so it's incredible feeling that, hey, you're doing something that's beyond yourself, so.
Orion, the new spacecraft that could carry humans farther into space than we've ever seen before.
This is why I am in spaceflight. You're doing something for not just yourself or NASA, but humanity, I feel like.
Ali prije svakog ozbiljnog razmišljanja o ljudskoj posadi treba proći sve faze još jednog ključnog elementa Oriona, sustava za obustavu lansiranja.
If when we're launching and something does go wrong, the launch abort system needs to be prepared to eject and take the crew away from that dangerous environment and save their lives.
Potreba za takvim sustavom za hitne slučajeve pojavila se prilikom leta Sojuza MS-10, u čijoj su posadi bili Lukini i Kristinini kolega astronauti, Nick Hague i Aleksej Ovčinjen.
They were launching on the same spacecraft that I had flown, same rocket, same launch as hundreds of others.
Liftoff.
And there is liftoff of the Soyuz MS-10 to the International Space Station.
It went from normal to something was wrong pretty quick.
7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
So the first thing I really noticed was being shaken fairly violently side to side.
Pojavio se kvar kod jedne od pogonskih raketa koja se sudarila s glavnom letjelicom i prepustila je slobodnom padu.
The failure of the booster.
And then there was an alarm inside the capsule and a light that was up there, and I knew once I saw that light that we had an emergency with the booster.
Aktivira se sustav za bijeg pri lansiranju još iz sovjetskog doba i kapsulu s posadom odvaja od goruće rakete.
Separation. Enable power.
At that point, we weren't going to make it to orbit that day.
Sustav bijega pri lansiranju spasio je Niku i Alekseju život tako što je njihovu kapsulu izvukao na sigurno i omogućio im da aktiviraju padobrane.
Space is hard. Human exploration of space is hard. There's risk, and we do everything we can to mitigate that risk, but there's always some risk there. This was just a great example of those fail-safe systems stepping in and doing their job.
Na vrh kapsule Orion postavljen je sličan sigurnosni sustav. Mala raketa predviđena da svemirsku kapsulu odmakne od opasnosti. U slučaju nužde, raketa bi se trebala aktivirati u roku od nekoliko milisekundi i proizvesti 200-tinjak tona potiska.
We can see what can go wrong. That's a pivotal role that we play to test all the components and making sure that it all works before we bring in the astronauts.
Testiranje sustava obustave lansiranja još je jedna ključna faza. Zato je potrebno lansirati pogonsku raketu na kruto gorivo.
This test is critical because it's going to come before the mission that puts the first woman
and the next man on the surface of the moon.
I was very excited. I was actually out at the Cape Canaveral getting ready to experience this.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, ignition. And this is the LC, Minotaur launch vehicle is carrying the AA-2 launch abort system for a full stress test.
The first few seconds of launch is always very nerve-wracking because you're never really sure if something's going to go wrong. About 55 seconds in, we were expecting the abort sequence to start. It's a lot of anticipation. Is the abort motor going to work? Is it actually going to disconnect from the booster? Whenever you see that burst of flame, you're like, did something go wrong? And then you have that relief that it really did as it was supposed to.
Motor za prekid akcije uspješno se odvaja od pogonske rakete. Zatim se gorući sustav obustave lansiranja mora odvojiti od kapsule s posadom Oriona. Ako se obustavni sustav ne odbaci dovoljno brzo u hitnim slučajevima tijekom lansiranja s posadom, astronauti u Orionu mogli bi se naći u opasnosti jer bi njihova kapsula eksplodirala zajedno s raketom.
So at this point, this is where it's working to orient the crew module at the right spot. Then now you're focused on it. The crew module is jettisoned safely away from the LAS. And it's just a countdown at that point. It's getting real close. And there it is.
Pyros 3 and 4 discharge both sides.
And then you see that moment of the separation of the crew module from the LAS.
So there goes the LAS.
That's when you realize that the LAS really did what it was supposed to, and it's just a moment of relief from that point on.
Recall there are no parachutes on this test today, so once the data recorders have been deployed and the vehicle is no longer transmitting data, TC will call test complete.
There was a lot of work behind it, and so there was a lot of pride in that when it was completed. When Orion's on the launch pad, I think there'll be tears in my eyes seeing that.
Astronauts are not adrenaline junkies. We wouldn't be astronauts if we were. When you're strapped on the rocket, the accomplishment is all the training that you have received in order to feel safe.
The launch abort system is a critical path to the design of any space mission. People see that system as every bit as important as the primary systems that are going to get you to the moon, even though their true hope is we never actually have to use these systems.
Ispod Orionove kapsule za posadu montira se Europski servisni modul, ESM, koji daje snagu, pogon, vodu i zrak. ESM je isporučila Europska svemirska agencija, ima 33 motora, među kojima je i glavni motor preuređen od Space Shuttle-a, koji će tjerati Orion do Mjeseca i natrag. Električnu energiju dobivat će od 4 solarne ploče duge 7 metara, koje mogu proizvesti dovoljno struje za napajanje 2 trosobnih kuća.
Life support, the propulsion, the electrical systems and so on are all in the back end of that vehicle. And so for the first time, NASA's crew vehicle depends fundamentally on ESA technology.
Orion će biti uklopljen u najsnažniju dosad konstruiranu raketu, NASIN svemirsko-lansirni sustav ili SLS. Sljedeći korak na putu do Mjeseca bit će Artemida 1, prvi let SLS-a, koji će sadržavati sva 3 Orionova modula na letu bez posade oko Mjeseca, planiranom za 2022. godinu.
The integrated aspect of all the systems working together for the first time, that's actually the main objective. We're gonna get into the orbit of the moon. It will go as close as 100 kilometers from the surface of the moon. Well, we're testing everything and we're happy. We'll leave the lunar orbit and get back to Earth, and it will be in a test of all the Orion entry systems, but at the actual speed coming back from the moon.
Oko Oko 2 godine nakon prvog leta Artemida 2 dobit će prvu ljudsku posadu u kapsuli Oriona i povešće ih na još jedan prelet pokraj Mjeseca. Prvi let s posadom usmjeren na mjesečevu površinu bit će Artemida 3, planiran za 2025. godinu. Orion će se u mjesečevoj orbiti sastati s lunarnim zvjezdanim brodom, sustavom za spuštanje ljudi koji je izradio jedan od NASA-inih komercijalnih partnera, SpaceX. Taj brod prevozit će astronaute do mjesečeve površine i vraćat će ih na Orion, koji će ih prevesti kući.
With HLS, which is the human landing system, it is going to require all of the modern day innovation that we can muster out of a space industry that NASA has really helped to foster.
Now, when you work for NASA, as I did for 20 years, you are constantly aware you're dealing with the taxpayers' money. Space entrepreneurs are putting their own money into developing the rockets and the capsules. They can take risks that NASA couldn't take.
Testiranje prototipova zvjezdanog broda otkriva poteškoće kod te tehnologije.
I like the fact that failure is an option when we're developing these far out vehicles and new concepts, because that's how we get to achieving something new. When I see something like that, I see innovation. I see people that aren't afraid to ask the tough questions, to dream the big dreams.
Taj san uspostaviti dugoročnu održivu prisutnost na površini Mjeseca. Da bi to omogućili, NASA i njezini partneri u sljedećih će 10 godina izgraditi lunarna vrata, Lunar Gateway, svemirsku postaju na kojoj će astronauti moći živjeti i raditi u mjesečevoj orbiti. Vrata će biti i pristanište za svemirske letjelice na putu prema Zemlji i s nje, te za spuštanje na površinu Mjeseca. Na kraju će postati i lansirna rampa prema ostatku sunčeva sustava.
The gateway becomes a staging post for humans to go from Earth to the moon and back again, as well as building an infrastructure to enable sustained human surface presence.
There are a great number of places we want to explore. So having gateway facilitates exploration of the entire moon.
So you'll dock with the gateway and then go from the gateway down to the surface. It's very exciting to think that in a few years' time there will be some of our astronauts alongside our international partners living in orbit around the moon, doing science, but also going down to the surface.
The Lunar Gateway is a series of components that will give us the ability to be there in the lunar vicinity permanent, like we have for decades now on the space station.
It's a much smaller, more compact version of the ISS.
We're really, really good at low Earth orbit missions, and it's exciting to turn that expertise into the next phase. The shuttle brought up modules of the space station, and people did spacewalks to physically put together what we now see as rooms, trusses, solar arrays. Massive components of this space station were put together by people's hands. It was the ultimate construction project, and actually, to me, assembling Gateway is one of the things I would be looking forward to the most.
Sklapanje Gatewaya bit će opsežan projekt koji će zahtijevati godine truda. Biće potrebne nebrojene svemirske šetnje kao onda kada se sastavljala Međunarodna svemirska postaja ISS. Kao što je Luca Parmitano otkrio, takva vrsta aktivnosti može biti krajnje opasna, pogotovo kad radite 400.000 kilometara daleko od Zemlje.
Spacewalking is one of the riskiest things that we do in our business.
Luca Parmitano i Chris Cassidy u svemirskoj su šetnji kako bi postavili nove kabele oko vanjskog dijela Međunarodne svemirske postaje.
All right, P1 is connected and moving on to P2.
I'm working fast, Chris is working fast. I feel great.
Ali na toj rutinskoj svemirskoj šetnji događa se nešto neočekivano.
I feel something that should not be there. And it's water right on the back of my head.
FYI, I feel a lot of water on the back of my head, but I don't think it's leaked from my back.
Something is not right. I don't know where it's coming from. And then I feel it crawling across the back. So now the ground is getting a little more concerned. I don't see the water, but maybe Chris can.
I see beads of sweat. No, it's not sweat. No, it's not sweat.
Hey, Luca, can you clarify, is it increasing or not increasing?
It's hard to tell, but it feels like a lot of water.
On the ground, they tell me that they're checking for leaks and there are no leaks.
But where is it coming from there? It's too much. I don't know, it's a lot. That's my ice.
And then finally on the ground, they tell me, all right, Luca, and this is the moment I dread.
Based on what we heard with Lucas saying that water is in his eyes now and it seems to be increasing, we think we're going to terminate EVA case for EV2. So, Luca, we'll have you head back to the airlock.
In that moment, the sun goes down. One moment you have light, and the next you are in complete darkness. I lose sight of Chris because I turn a corner, so I just start crawling back. In order to navigate my spacesuit and myself around a certain area, I need to go upside down relative to the Earth. As I flip my body, the water sloshes over to my eyes, to my ears, and to my nose, and completely isolates me. I can't see anything because the water is over my eyes, and I cannot get it out of my eyes. I call Chris, and I tell him, hey Chris, I think I'm lost. And I get no answer. But also I don't know how much time do I have. So the water is in my nose already. How much time do I have before the water keeps flowing and covers my mouth? Can I stay here waiting for Chris to come and rescue me? Chris. I decided I don't have enough time. I need to go back to the airlock on my own. But how do I get back if I cannot see where I'm going? All I see is a little bit of light in front of me. I make a plan in my head. I've been underwater in a spacesuit in the mock-up of the space station so many hours that I can see it in my head. I can imagine how I need to move and where I need to go. So I slowly start in the direction that I think it's where I came from. I put my safety tether outside the airlock, so there is a little bit of tension that is pulling me in that direction. And it's telling me that I'm going in the right direction, I'm not getting further away. So I follow that tiny pull, trying to feel my way towards the airlock. This lasts about 6 minutes. They felt like a very long time to me.
I can barely speak to you. I'm opening the airlock cover.
I go inside first. On the ground, they don't know what's going on. They have no understanding of how much in trouble I am.
Okay, I'm in. Roger that.
Once Chris closes the hatch, I know I'm safe.
And I'm here to help, Luca.
And that's when I feel somebody squeezing my hand. It was Chris.
Hey, Luca from Houston, how you doing? Give us the status.
Luca, did you hear that?
I can hear no sound whatsoever. But Chris can, and so what he does, he just kind of twists in the spacesuit to look at me. And he can see that I'm there, I'm breathing with my eyes closed.
It looks miserable, but okay.
And then he squeezes my hand, and I squeeze him back.
Hatch coming open.
Airlock Houston, if you could have some towels ready, that would be great.
And then when they open the airlock, I see my crewmates inside the space station. I was crying. I'd never seen anybody so worried about another person in my life, about me. So they take me out, and as soon as they can, they depressurize my suit and they take my helmet off. And they're handing me towels because I'm completely wet. We estimate about 1.5 liters of water inside the helmet, which is a lot of water because the helmet is pretty small.
Chris Cassidy there in the background. He'll be floated through next as they continue to get Luca Parmitano out of his spacesuit.
They ask the crew from the ground, hey, how is Luca doing? How is he doing? And I'm like, hey, guys.
Just so you know, I'm alive, and I can answer those questions, too.
Luca, we are delighted to hear your voice, delighted to see you, and we'll come to you with any questions as we get them. Thank you very much.
Istraga je pokazala da je uzrok začepljenja bilo curenje vode iz sustava za hlađenje odijela u ventilacijski cirkulatorni sustav u Lukinoj kacigi.
We didn't think it was possible for water to get into my helmet and almost drown me. There are risks and dangers out there that we just haven't thought about, but we will solve them.
The fact that NASA puts so much importance on something not going according to plan is important. We get to review plans and equipment to make sure that that situation doesn't happen again.
Uzevši u obzir sve što smo naučili u više od 5,5 desetljeća šetnji svemirom, NASA je izradila novo svemirsko odijelo koje će astronautima omogućiti dugotrajan život i rad na mjesecu.
I am so excited about the new spacesuits. They're going to really put the spacewalking in spacewalking because they've got awesome boots for planetary exploration.
A new spacesuit is fundamental because it's a tool, and a tool needs to be designed for a specific purpose.
They're a small spaceship that our astronauts are in, and they have to be protected.
You need to be able to walk, you need to be able to have dexterity, you need to be able to have a suit that is sturdy enough that it doesn't get damaged by the rocky environment of the surface.
They are made to be able to reach down, pick things up, move around. The dexterity is incredible.
Sastavni dio novog svemirskog odijela prenosni je sustav za održavanje života. S cirkulacijom vode, hlađenjem i ventilacijom posebno preuređenima kako se incident poput curenja vode u Lukinu kacigu ne bi ponovio na mjesecu. Krajnji je cilj programa Artemida slanje posade na Mars, ali prije razmatranja takvog trogodišnjeg povratnog putovanja astronauti moraju dokazati da mogu samostalno živjeti na mjesecu.
So if we want to live and work away from Earth in the long term, whether that's on the moon or Mars or even further beyond, sooner or later we have to learn how to use the things that we find at the places that we go. And so we talk about in situ resource utilization, the use of things that we find locally.
We want to be able to explore, to understand the nature of the South Pole and to use the resources that are there.
Because it's really important for us to understand where the water is on the lunar surface so we can design systems that can extract it and use it as that resource. Prospecting and finding that lunar water is really the first step of enabling that exploration.
Misije Prime 1 i Viper prolaze pripreme za let 2022. godine kako bi mogle bušiti na mjesečevu južnom polu. Uzorkovat će lunarnu vodu na različitim područjima, izrađivati karte resursa koje će prikazivati lokacije i količine te dragocjene tekućine.
Brain will be driving on will have not seen the light of day for maybe 2 billion years. We're going to go in there with our rover and illuminate it for the very first time is truly exploration. You know, it's looking into the darkness.
It is a lot of pressure when you realize how big of an impact this data can have on the future of exploration.
The mission is a pathfinder in many ways for all the future missions that come after it.
S pomoću tih prikaza resursa bit će određena lokacija za postavljanje Artemidina baznog logora na površini mjeseca. Izgradnja logora može se voditi iz gatewaya u orbiti kombinacijom robotske i ljudske stručnosti.
We have been investigating ways that you could teleoperate robots at the lunar surface from other locations like the gateway.
We have already extracted out of the moon regolith aluminum, titanium, iron and silicon to build structures, elements, tools. We'll simply 3D print moon-based structures around itself.
And if you could put inside a pneumatic tent that you could then inflate, pressurize, warm up using electricity, now you have created the basis for a village.
As a byproduct of the extraction of those materials, we produced oxygen. It is a fundamental product to make astronauts breathe. So this concept of in situ resource utilization, we want to expand it to the maximum, so to make those missions possible and sustainable.
Kada čovječanstvo dokaže da može crpsti i rabiti lunarnu vodu za život na mjesecu, buduće misije na Mars moći će se pokretati tim istim lunarnim resursima.
The skills, the knowledge, the technology that we build as we do this on the moon will take us on to Mars, and then that will set up the way that we do this elsewhere in the solar system.
Just the use of lunar propellant will save on the order of $12 billion per Mars mission.
The lunar surface offers not only resources, but it offers us a test bed to make sure that we understand how to architect and how to work on another planetary body.
It's going to be really important when we go on to Mars, because the farther we go out, obviously, the more resources and costs are required to get the mass to those locations.
It inspires me, and I hope we inspire the next generation of explorers. I think the people that may land on Mars for the first time are probably already born.
I think it's closer now than it ever has been.
Hurry up. Come here now.
It's not a Disney movie. This is real.
Traveling to the moon, staying there, and eventually using that as a stepping stone for interplanetary travel and being an interplanetary species means that there is a whole new set of things we're going to learn about ourselves. We're going to learn what's important to us. We're going to learn what we love. We're going to learn what we need, and I think most of all about what brings us together, about our shared humanity.
I hope that the future is beyond my wildest dreams, and it's something that I just cannot even imagine.